So welcome everyone. On behalf of the organizers, I'm delighted to welcome you to this first edition of the 2022 Patient Engagement Open Forum, organized as a collaboration between the Patient-Focused Medicines Development, PFMD, European Patients Forum, EPF, and the European Patients Academy, EUPATI. First, some housekeeping issues. This is an open workshop that's held virtually, and the session is recorded. You can provide input via chat and insert questions in the Q&A box. And in the Q&A, all questions will be shown with your name, and you can upvote a question if you have the same in mind, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible during the session. Next slide, please. So if you are new to the Patient Engagement Open Forum, here is a brief summary for you. The Open Forum is a global, practical, co-creation focused series of online and in-person events to make meaningful and systematic patient engagement a norm in medicines development, medical technology, digital health, and beyond. And the Open Forum emerged from the need for a platform to work together in a multi-stakeholder context to collaborate on practical solutions for ongoing real patient engagement initiatives. And it aims to provide a holistic perspective of patient engagement, the landscape, and the actors, and to foster collaboration and co-creation while breaking down fragmentation. Next slide, please. This year marks the 5th year of the Open Forum, starting from a small in-person conference as part of the European IMI Paradigm project, and now growing into this global multi-stakeholder event that it is today, attracting growing and diverse audiences with a reach of over 1.5 million people last year. Next slide, please. And this year we have 5 editions in total. We will hold both virtual and in-person events. In last year's closing session, we asked for your input on what you would like to hear and work on this year. And the key themes are what emerged. And based on your feedback, we have already had a special session on patient remuneration in February. And this week we will continue to build on some of your requests, including sessions on patient experience data and patient engagement in research. Next slide, please. And this April edition of the Open Forum will include 4 sessions spread out over 2 days. So please stay tuned after this session for the patient experience data session, including speakers from FDA, HCAI, Eli Lilly, and the University of Maryland. Next slide, please. And here's the today's agenda. We will have a presentation about the trends in patient engagement, and we'll then be engaging in a discussion with our speakers. Then we will be getting your insights on how the current patient engagement landscape impacts the adoption of systematic patient engagement for your particular stakeholder group, and tying it back to how this open forum can support this. Now I would like to open the mentee and ask everyone to access the link that is being posted into the chat right now. So if you can click on that link and open it in your browsers, and then access this page that you can see on the screen, and let us know what are the words that come to your mind when you are thinking of patient engagement today. And you can insert up to 3 words. So what comes to your mind when you are thinking of patient engagement today? And as of patient engagement, we mean the meaningful engagement of patients in medicines development, medical technology, digital health, and beyond. And While you are inserting your responses, I am now going to ask our speakers to introduce themselves briefly and also answer this question, one or several words that come to your mind when thinking of patient engagement. Unfortunately, our first speaker, Bettina Röhl, is not able to make it today due to unforeseen circumstances, but we have Rebecca, Jim, and Anka on the panel today. So first, I would like to ask Rebecca to introduce yourself briefly and also give us your keyword. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted and thrilled to be with you today. I thank you for this time we have together. I have the opportunity to lead our global patient network at Roche, and in doing so, really working collectively with the team to identify how we can use the power of the patient voice in truly engaging patients systematically from early to late, and making sure that we are thinking of all decisions that are taken through the lens of patients. Putting patients first and really driving our company to move towards patient-driven science, where all solutions are co-created with patients. This can only be done when we are putting health outcomes at the center of decision-making by really listening to the needs of patients. So I'm enjoying the opportunity to champion these efforts to give patients the information they need, and to make sure we're bringing these incredible insights to our research and development team as we develop new treatments and do this in a way with trusted partnerships with patients. So I am really thrilled to be here and also have the opportunity to serve as a member of our PFMD board of directors. Let's see, if there's one word I had to pick today, I would say it is active listening. Patient engagement happens on a foundation of active listening and co-creating together.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Then I would like to ask Jim next to introduce yourself and also provide the input in terms of this special word in your mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here as well. My name's Jim Elliott. My main sort of working role is to lead the work on patient engagement for the UK's regulator of health research, the Health Research Authority, and that means putting the patient voice into the work that we do as an organisation, but also using the Health Research Authority's influence on the research community to promote and support more and better engagement of patients in all sorts of health and social care research studies. And that means a lot of collaboration across the research system in the UK and increasingly beyond the UK. So this is part of our work beyond the UK. And like Rebecca, I'm also a member of the board of Patient-Focused Medicines Development, which gives us a good opportunity to do more in different places. As well as that professional role with the Health Research Authority, which I do part-time, I'm also an independent advocate for patients in research with a particular focus on cancer research through a lot of family cancer and friends, and do a lot of work across lots of different organisations, and the two things dovetail very, very nicely, I find. In terms of what I thought about today, well, three words or phrases, if you like, came to mind. One is collaboration, because actually that's what this is all about, as well as multidisciplinarity, because again, this is about lots of voices. It's the patient at the center, but actually lots of voices working together. And then obviously patient-centered, because again, that's what today is about, and all of these sessions and the various initiatives that are brought together through the open forum.
Thank you so much, Jim. And then turning to you, Anka, next.
And I have to unmute first. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anka Toma. I am the Executive Director of the European Patients Forum. I've started only recently, and I will start with the three words that came to mind that I input into mentee. Inclusion, equity, and collaboration. This is what EPF stands for. We represent the voice of patients, and We bring the perspective of our members that come from a very diverse geographical and health background into all of these processes. And I'm very, very proud to be representing EPF in this session today. And I hope that our team will continue to bring that voice and that value into the discussion.
Thank you so much. And we really look forward to the panel discussion a bit later in this session. May I now ask for the mentee results to be displayed? Are we ready to share this? Thank you so much. So empowerment, co-creation, inclusion, influence, partners, collaborative seem to be the strongest ones. This is a very beautiful word cloud. Thank you for everyone for contributing. And we will come back to this in the discussion later on. Now I would like to invite Nicola next for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for all the introduction from the speakers. So I'm Nicholas Brook. I'm the Executive Director of PFMD, and basically before we get into further discussion, we wanted to step back and take a little bit of a perspective on patient engagement. But today we'll focus a lot on the patient community, and you will see why I'm saying that. Basically what we will discuss about fair market value, why it is important, why it's important to do it, and why it's also very important to do it very well. And so we had the first session earlier this year. We will have more sessions. We will discuss all along the year about patient engagement and patient experience data and how the two work together or don't work very well on their own. We will discuss about monitoring patient engagement to learn, because we cannot continue to make statements about patient engagement without being able to bring some substance to it. We will discuss about patient engagement in research that we start today too with Jim, but how do we do to go beyond what's happening in the UK right now, and I mean in other regions. We'll talk about patient engagement in pediatrics, in patient engagement in digital, and so on and so on. Those are very important topics. But what about the whole system? What about taking a step back? And what about discussing these all along the year? But also we will have the opportunity, and I just wanted to make a little plug here, we will have a face-to-face or in-person meeting for PEOF in October. And so here we have a big community. We are online. We have quite a reach here. And in October, the goal will be really to meet all together and focus on what we have not been doing for 2 years, meeting face-to-face, have a coffee, discuss, workshop where we can draw on paper boards and things like that. So that's coming this year, and we will do that with all these very strategic topics. Now, stepping back, and if we can go to the next slide. For those of you that were with us at the closing session in 2021, you have seen a slide very close to this one. Actually, we have added the very recent move from HRA in terms of promoting patient engagement in research in the UK, and Jim will talk about that today. And basically what we wanted to illustrate with this slide is that in the last 27 years until 2019, you can see the blue part with some happenings linked to patient engagement, so key milestones. But actually, when you look at the last 2 years, you see that we have as many milestones, and actually some of them are extremely meaningful. It's when the regulators or the payers are taking position and clearly making things, I'm not sure we can say mandatory yet, and we will have the discussion with Jim, but it's setting very clear expectation. And that is an acceleration, which is actually not going to vanish. And not only there is an acceleration because regulators start to align globally, HTAs as well, but there is also a convergence, because what we hear more and more, and that's great to hear, is that the different stakeholders serving the patient community are actually now trying to see on how they can work together. So not only patient engagement in regulatory affairs or patient engagement in HTAs or in research, but actually patient engagement to serve all these stakeholders from a common ground. And so that means that if we have acceleration and convergence at the same time, actually from a systemic point of view, there is it's very great to we have a good chance to see more patient engagement happen concretely for everybody systematically. If we can go to this next slide. Some organizations in all stakeholder groups have actually identified the shift of paradigm regarding patient engagement. And so we are shifting from the risk of patient engagement to the risk of not involving patients. And really, several organizations and many organizations out there have identified that. And it's really a question, it's not just a nice thing to do anymore, it's a performance factor for the organization, whatever type of organization you are. And so engaging patients is now perceived as a way to increase your performance as an organization. It's a great paradigm shift. But at the same time, if we can go to the next slide, at the same time, it creates a tension because actually, and very often we point at the patient community, is the patient community ready? Do they have the capacity and the capability to engage with all stakeholders? But when we know a little bit of different system, it's actually all stakeholders that need to talk about readiness. And that creates very often internal tensions for an organization. So are we ready with our internal processes? Is it real patient engagement or is it tokenism? And so there are different issues that are internally specifics, but then also like, what does that mean when we start to engage? Do we have the right relationship? Do we have the skills? I've seen the word collaboration, co-creation in the tech load earlier. It's a skill. Very little organization, very little stakeholder group have really built the skills, the relationship, the type of leadership needed to run this type of relationship. And so actually there is a tension in the system, and we observe that in many organizations. It's time for change, and change is happening, but it's not a very smooth change for many organizations. Now, what we want, so all of that is probably not totally new to you. What I would like to, if we can go to the next slide, we wanted to focus also a little bit on the patient community today, because if you look at it, and actually this slide is valid for any type of organization, but we were showing the systemic acceleration of patient engagement with the tension it creates on any single organization. But we also are going through, because none of them are finished, to two major crises. So we hope it's short term, but still the two crises are in place. And basically, if we focus a bit more for a minute on the patient community is actually frontline in the three arrows that you see on the screen there. So it's from a tension because there is a systemic change. We are going to a hypertension because the patient community is frontline in giving support for during the pandemic. We've limited resources and actually cut resources because their usual activities could not be run properly either. And now they are also, especially in Europe, I believe, they are also really frontline to help the Ukrainian patients or citizens that are actually moving out of Ukraine and finding themselves in a health system that doesn't talk their language and with problem of continuity of their treatment. So all of that to actually take a little bit of distance and to say, okay, I think it's great from my perspective, if I can express myself, it's great to see that the patient community is actually taking this central role in the front line, but in the front line everywhere means also that we might want to rethink if that's what we want, then we also need to invest seriously in the patient community for the patient community to be able to deliver. And I'm not sure we are there even in the way we think about it yet. So if they are at the center, we need a pretty robust center. How can we invest in that center of our health systems? And so that will be actually the main theme of our discussion today. Before we go for the rest of PF activities during the year and starting with PNPED later today, but how can we actually look at the patient community and what are the different stakeholders groups have to do to support the patient community or to receive support from other stakeholders to better engage with the patient community. And I think I will stop here with this slide. So next slide, please. We were, no, just a quick word on that. This slide is a visual way to show contrast. And actually, that's where we think about the patient community, very active on the field, supporting patients, super agile on one side. And then we think about the patient community that needs to engage in a process to deliver a new drug in 10, 15 years from now, with a completely different posture, probably a completely different skill sets. And so how from one type of organization, and they engage also with regulators, HTAs, industry players that are much more bigger organization, less agile very often. So how can we play with this contrast, and what should we expect from the patient community if they have to be able to play on all fields, whether it's agile, very specific, close to the patient, or the more systemic type of engagement on the other side. So these contracts and sometimes these contradictions, very little organization out there have the ability to be both agile and as massive as pharma companies, regulators, or others. So how we play with that, and actually it's very important for the patient community, but also for the other stakeholders that will engage with them. And now we were supposed to have Bettina Rill as the first speaker. She couldn't come and she apologized for that. She had a priority she could not avoid. And so basically, I will say in short, and I will see in the chat if anyone from the patient committee want to complement what I will be saying here. I will explain in short what she was describing within our preparation sessions. And so basically what happened, so we wanted to start with what's happening now and what is the top priority for the patient community because of the Ukraine crisis. And so the Weekend Network, because that's about that little case studies that we want to talk today. The Weekend Network, cancer community in Europe, is actually meeting every single morning, 9 o'clock, to actually see on how they can engage and support the patients that have a continuity of treatment issue. That's, I think, the most common issues that they have to face. They find themselves in Poland or other countries around Ukraine or across Europe. And there is a very important question about continuity of treatment. And so for, I think, the first time, and please use the chat if you want to correct or complement what I'm saying. For, I think, the first time, what happened is that the cancer community, in this case, worked not in vertical ways per conditions, but they all gathered as a network, a very, very agile network. They know each other already. And so basically what they've been doing together across conditions in the Weekend Network has been to help each other to connect with the people they know in a given country, in a given city, and to actually help the patients. And what I remember from the preparation is that very often the patient community managed to be extremely fast in getting the support to the patient that needed it. And actually very proud of that. I could feel pride in the voice of Bettina, and I was very impressed personally by all the stories they were telling, but very often much faster than the health systems or the other organization on the field. And so I think that's one of the key elements we wanted to illustrate here. Is the huge agility of a patient community that started to organize itself as a network and remain very, very agile to deliver support to the patients. And I will stop here with what I can tell, because I'm not sure about what else I could say about it. I'm just checking quickly the chat to see if someone wants to complement what I'm saying. I see a comment from Valentina confirming how much crisis has a good stress test to prove the strength of patient communities and their network. So I don't know if you want to build on that, Valentina, but happy for you to do it if you want to do it. So voila, so a first layer of what the patient community is doing, the agile and network organization. Now, I wanted to give the voice to Rebecca because in the preparation, we also heard that Rebecca within Roche has been facing some of the same issues from a different type of organization. So Rebecca, if you could build a little bit on the stories of the weekend network and then see what it means for you, for Roche, and how you can play with these different, what is at stake in terms of type of organizations and the industry point of view.
Thank you, Nicholas. That dreaded mute button. Anyway, I am really pleased to share perspective and view. You know, it's interesting when we talk about the contrast of being, you know, big organizations working to drive change and also having to be nimble and flexible. I think the first point I would like to make is that, you know, as we came into this situation and really understanding how we engage with patients in any situation or in any disease area, first and foremost, we have to be able to take that view as a system as a whole, right? And so to really drive the change that we'd like to see, having that view of the bigger picture is really important. And certainly this only works when it's done in partnership with patients. It includes, you know, all patients, right? Underserved patient populations. And certainly in this crisis, we can appreciate the impact this is having on people's lives. And really then be able to flex, right, in our system to really understand what do we need to do to meet them where they are, to understand what they're going through, and making sure that we are listening to that system and able to meet patients where they are. So in this situation, it really required that we flexed, and we too put together a Ukraine patient task force led by leaders within our global patient network team. I'm incredibly proud of this group. And they came together and really connected, meeting every day to make sure we were doing everything we could to address the needs of patients and continuing to meet. And so, you know, for patients in Ukraine, it really meant that we had to work very quickly to understand the situation, to listen to the needs locally, and then to be able to adapt and flex our processes as a company as quickly as possible to ensure continuity of care. And we didn't have time. I mean, this is about learning as you go. So we, you know, immediately launched a toll-free number for patient and patient groups and have been actively promoting this in all social media, you know, in Facebook and in WhatsApp and in LinkedIn, all of the social media channels that we could find. We're providing the number to patient groups and FPA so that they can help raise awareness of this as well through our networks, because it takes that incredible collaboration as a network to drive change. And the example that you've highlighted, certainly that Bettina is leading with her community. And it just means we have to flex. I mean, we adopted existing processes for compassionate use to ensure that we are providing high continuity of care with a high level of compliance. We've adapted our global grants and donation processes to provide financial support when needing, so that we're able to elevate those concerns that may not be able to be addressed locally, and really partnering with patient groups and our local affiliates within the community, doing everything we can to make sure no patient is left behind. And so we're really learning from this experience, learning from what we did with COVID, and working our hardest to provide key principles really in determining how we're making decisions that enable us to move quickly, ensuring as much quality and integrity in our systems as possible. And so I think certainly that speaks to our commitment as a company in this situation. In this crisis situation, though, I think it also speaks to the strong commitment that we have to health equity. and ensuring that we're doing our part, as I mentioned before, to meet the needs of underserved patient populations, wherever they be, and making sure that we're committed to advancing inclusive research, partnering externally to address barriers to serve our low and middle income countries. And again, really looking at the system as a whole so that we can identify where and how to make investments to support patient needs. And sometimes that means we need to invest in infrastructure. It's not just about providing treatment if the infrastructure isn't there to support that. Or sometimes it really means that we have to understand what are the cultural barriers in front of patients being able to access care. And so I really want to highlight an incredible position paper that our IEPO community of patient leaders put together that's really highlighted what humanizing healthcare really means. And first and foremost, it's about putting the heart into healthcare, to understand patient perspectives and to be able to amplify their voices so their needs are being met. And like I said, if you haven't had an opportunity to read this position paper, I highly encourage you to do this, as the community has outlined some key steps, right, of how we need to go about considering this. And so, you know, seeing the system as a whole, it really does allow us to identify opportunities as we, as a company, are committed to continually engage with patients early and systematically throughout our development processes. Engaging with patients early and listening to their insights, we then have an opportunity to really co-create solutions together and make sure what we're providing is going to offer meaningful benefits while having a positive impact on quality of life. So it's really through this, by establishing strong foundations of patient engagement, that we can create then the data and the evidence that's necessary. And so if I could transition from this important topic of understanding the system as a whole, but then really how we ensure that we are building on this foundation of patient engagement, while then utilizing patient experience data that really justifies the value of the solutions, and make sure that we're doing everything we can to meet the needs of patients. We believe strongly patient communities, as we know, can drive change. And you see this as what's happening in Ukraine and other situations. And it really can help partnering with communities to enable the actions that need to happen with regulators, HTA, and other payers by presenting this data and really investing with the patient communities in these external partnerships where we can shape local health systems to recognize the value of patient-centered data. Digital, of course, is a huge enabler of this. When integrated together with patients, it really allows us to build on their experiences and improve their care in a transparent way. And certainly humanizing healthcare means that patients have to be at the center, and we have to ensure that whatever technology we're providing is accessible for all patients and really meeting them where they are. So generating evidence that can drive change and improve access is absolutely essential and needs to be done in partnership with patients. So initiatives like Data Saves Lives and other important initiatives are really paving the way for this, and we're happy to be partnering externally to support these initiatives. So I've said a whole lot, Nicholas, I know, in answer to your question about the work that we're doing and how we're viewing this. As we think about the future, you know, this combining together of patient experience data, understanding the systems that we're working in, and then really partnering very closely with patient groups and our communities to ensure that evidence-based advocacy is at the forefront, because that's where we're able to drive change and make sure that we're doing this in partnership with patients so that all patients are able to access our solutions. And we believe certainly that by amplifying the voice of patients, we're able to do this, including all communities, as I've mentioned, you know, and low and middle income countries. So I'll just close my comments by saying, you know, humanizing healthcare is a human right. And as humans, we all need to be committed to meeting the needs of patients empathetically, transparently, and in very realistic ways. As we're collecting data and information, we need to be very clear how we're utilizing this to support patients and really doing this in a way in co-creation with our patient communities. Partnership is key. It's the absolute foundation. And so I was very pleased to see these words, partnership, collaboration. I think for all of us, we can all see the breaks in the healthcare system, the cracks that exist. And in order for us to work together, it really does require us to step up in true collaboration to make sure that we are working together to make the changes that we want to see. And by partnering with patient communities and generating data and supporting evidence-based advocacy, I believe we can have a very positive impact for all patients and certainly for society as a whole. So like I said, that was a whole lot for you, Nicholas, in answer to your question. But certainly, you know, I think important as we think about what we need to do in the future to drive change.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And it was great actually to have a very broad response with very concrete elements regarding Ukraine, and then the systemic key principle we will have to embrace to make it work, and partnerships. So PEOF is the right place to make partnership happen. So good you are here, and we'll come back to that. And by the way, to the audience, please use the Q&A function. I see a lot of chat. It's difficult to keep track of all the points. By the way, Rebecca, there were a few requests about the link regarding of the position paper you've mentioned. So if you can share it here, or if you don't have it at hand, we will share it in the follow-up of the meeting. And so voilà, but please use the FAQ or the Q&A if you want to ask questions to the panel. So Jim, you come with a different hat, HRA, regulatory agencies about research in the UK. And so we have talked about evidence, we have talked about patient engagement in research. Can we say that the last move that HRA has done is about making patient engagement mandatory in research in UK? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicholas. And what I'll do is just talk through that initiative that you've mentioned, what we call the UK All Sector Shared Commitment to Public Involvement, which is what we call it in the UK, so patient engagement in this context. And linked to that work that the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, the MHRA, is doing around the new legislation we need in the UK now for clinical trials, where there's a proposal to make patient engagement in clinical trials as part of wider medicines development mandatory. Both of these initiatives effectively have come about as a result of what happened in the world during COVID. Back in 2020, the research community, commercial and non-commercial, responded amazingly to the COVID pandemic and finding solutions, public health and other solutions to COVID. But what we saw as a regulator with applications that were being very rapidly processed to support that initiative was that patient engagement dropped off. We'd normally seen a very high level, sort of 4 in 5 applications came to us. There was some patient engagement, some of it really good, some of it maybe not so good, but it was there. And patient groups who we're, patient advocates who we're linked to, sort of rang the alarm bells. What's happening? Why aren't people working with us? So we did a lot of work during that year with lots of partners across the UK health system to try to turn that round. And that provided us with, if you like, the spark to do something about this. So it revealed that whilst a lot of people thought patient engagement was well embedded in research in all different sectors in the UK, actually, when it came to a crisis, it wasn't. And the response seemed to be, we've got to get on and do the research, and actually it takes too much time and it's too difficult to talk to patients, so we won't bother and we don't even ask them. And actually patients didn't like that. And we were able to turn that round. And what made the difference was a high level message that working with patients, patient engagement is expected, it's important, and it's possible, whatever the circumstances. You know, just because you're setting up studies in weeks instead of months doesn't mean you can't ask patients to do the same. And people wanted to do that, and they did that. So the shared commitment to patient engagement is a statement of intent from 13 major research organisations in the UK, covering all sectors: public sector, voluntary, academic, and commercial. and this to make the involvement of people with relevant and appropriate experiential knowledge of what's being investigated, usual practice in all types of health and social care, including clinical trials and other clinical research that's part of the wider medicines development pathway. The vision for that is that anybody doing a piece of research anywhere in the UK, and it could be more wide than this, in any discipline, with any source of money, about anything, gets a consistent message about public involvement, patient engagement being important, it being expected, and being possible. Because at the moment, it's not consistent. And this has been the case for a long time. There's lots of good initiatives from the ground up, and what Rebecca was talking about in the industry is very, very welcome to see, but it's not universal. So this is about trying to provide some top-down pressure to meet the bottom-up initiatives. The signatories include the research arms of the 4 UK nations and UK Research and Innovation, which is the oversight body for the UK's research councils. And they're very major funders of non-commercial research in the UK. There are also membership organisations included in this, which include the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry, the Association of Medical Research Charities, and Universities UK, whose members are the principals and vice chancellors of all the UK's universities, and the Academy of Medical Sciences, whose members are academic clinicians and researchers, and then also the regulators, the Health Research Authority and the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. All of those organisations together represent a very large piece of the UK health and social care research community in terms of funders and sponsors and regulators. The plans to grow this membership, and it will include individual organisations of those who are represented by the membership organisations, but the initial list also includes Cancer Research UK, which is the UK's biggest single charity and the second largest funder of cancer research in the UK, behind the US National Cancer Institute. And although it wasn't the initial intention of this, actually what we've done could easily be spread out and made global. And there's no reason not to do that, because there's actually nothing about patient engagement in the UK that's unique and couldn't be adapted and done across the world. It's all about talking to patients, basically. Putting patients first is what we're talking about of this as an initiative. Patients and patient advocates played a key role in this initiative, and also in the MHRA's initiative on clinical trials, and they will continue to do so as we develop this initiative. The 13 organisations that were part of the initial signatories worked together for 6 months to draw up the shared statement, and key to that was the role of patient advocates. So as the sort of conveners and facilitators of this initiative at the Health Research Authority, we invited each organisation to bring 2 patient advocates to the table, and they worked both in the workshop meetings, but also as a separate group, and took a leading role in drafting the statement, which went through nearly 30 iterations before we got agreement at executive level in each one of those 13 organisations. And the role of the patient advocates was absolutely vital in making that statement both really strong, based around the rights of people to be part of research which is about them, and based on their needs and priorities, as well as making the language clear and accessible. And I think that was absolutely crucial in getting the universal and very enthusiastic sign off at executive level by all 13 organisations. And I hate to think how many iterations there might have been, and how long it might have taken to get agreement, and how complicated the language might have been had it been the officers of those organisations trying to produce that statement and not the patients. So actually making it patient-led, I just think made it a no-brainer for all of those organisations to say, yes, we must respond to what patients who are representing us want. The statement alone, though, won't change anything. So each organisation is preparing, or has prepared, a statement of actions that it's going to take within its specific role in the research system to make that commitment actually an action, and embed it. And these actions are going to be reported on and monitored, and a year after the initial launch, which was March the 11th, we will be collectively producing some kind of report of what we've done to try to change things. And the patient advocacy group, again, will play a really vital role in this, in holding to account both the individual organizations that each represents, but also us as a group of partnerships, to make sure that we're actually doing more than just talking about it. And the team supporting today will put links in the chat to the announcement that was on the Health Research Authority's website, and also a link to a personal blog that I wrote about this, because although the COVID pandemic sparked this initiative, gave us a purpose, gave us something we could work on to make this go forward. Actually, it's been a bit of a personal crusade of mine over about 15 years to make something like this happen, because it's been lacking for so long in the UK, and I'm absolutely thrilled that this has been able to happen, because I think it will just drive engagement where it really needs to be at the centre, and make, put patients first in all the research. Very briefly, the second initiative, which is the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency's consultation on proposals for new legislation for clinical trials, that ran from January to March this year, and that includes a proposal to make patient engagement mandatory. It's the responses to consultation, and there were a heck of a lot of them, which is really good, are being analysed, and I can't give a spoiler alert, a spoiler in terms of what's actually been found so far, but there has been strong support in the run up to that. There was quite a lot of consultation and collaboration. So the Health Research Authority worked with the MHRA in terms of putting together what went into the consultation, and there were patient groups from both organisations and individual patient advocates involved in this. And again, it fits in with the overall shared commitment approach, but it will need to be done very carefully. So there are, people will undoubtedly raise lots of things that need to be put into this very carefully, and we had to think very carefully ourselves about mandating patient engagement because of the risks of driving tokenism and box ticking, but actually supported by very effective and enabling guidance and lots of collaboration between partners. We think it's the right way to go, because we've seen an awful lot of actually very tokenistic behavior trying to avoid patient engagement in medicines. So it's a very important initiative, but it needs to be taken forward very carefully, and is very specific, obviously, to one aspect of the whole medicines pathway. But it's about putting patients first, as I said before, and patients have been front, center, and everything about the initiative. And the group that we worked with have been just inspirational in making amazing, really big organizations actually play nicely together and do the right thing. And I think this will make a difference, and there's an opportunity here to spread this. It needn't be UK focused only. We want to grow it in the UK, but there is interest. We've already seen from I think over 1 million impressions on Twitter from the launch on the 11th of March from across the world. So maybe we've sparked an interest in something that's perhaps lacking more widely. I don't know. So I hope that addresses what you were asking me to, Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Jim. And I don't know if you have seen, but the chat and the Q&A got quite active. So thank you very much. And so it's great to see that in the UK. And I think I've seen a question in the chat asking, okay, how can we extend that beyond UK? I think you made a comment about that. Maybe there is a role to play for PEOF and all of us in this group to share. And so one of the little homework I think we should work on, Jim, is to say, okay, what can we do to disseminate not only the statement and what you have presented to us, but the learnings, how you make it happen, and see how we can actually try to go beyond the UK with that statement. Something that, and something very specific to UK too, I think, is that it's citizens and patients and not only patients. And very often in involvement, the UK is very advanced in terms of that type of collaboration. And there's a clear distinction that we should maybe see more often. There were a couple of questions, and Rebecca, I will give you the voice in 1 minute. There was a question, anonymous question about the need to actually help patients getting engaged. So patients are and there was a little bit of different opinions in the chat if patient wants to be engaged or not. But in the question from the Q&A, what are the resources that you have put in place or the systems you have put in place to help the patients being engaged? So there is a mention how to better understand clinical trials, regulatory requirements and expectations, for example. So have you put anything particular in place for that?
During the pandemic, when we sort of put our head above the parapet and said, yes, we'll try and help and sort this out. What we did was we worked with lots of different organizations that enabled patient engagement at local levels, whether through a sort of email network of individuals or through formal groups, and use that as a sort of network of networks and we ran something called the Public Involvement Matching Service for COVID, where we were trying to put researchers in touch with interested patients who could help them. But more widely than that, there's a community, and what we found was before that there were people working in their individual silos, either disease areas or charity specific or whatever it happens to be, specific universities. But we tried to get everybody to work together in a sort of very sort of egalitarian way, I think. And there's untapped potential in that to address this issue of trying to support and encourage more people generally to be involved. And I'm glad, Rebecca, you talked about the people who are most poorly served by health services, but also health research. And we really need to do a lot more to reach out and widen the voices. We need to champion the voices. We need to put the voices of patients front and center, but it needs to be all voices, not just those who are most frequently heard. And there's a lot of work to be done, but everybody's aware of it, and there are some good initiatives to try to address that. So the collaboration is the key to this. People who are involved in research tend to be, in the UK, tend to be involved in lots of groups. So the network of networks we put together, actually there were 5 groups I'm a member of alone on that. So, I'm a member of 5 groups, I'm a member of 10 or 15 or whatever. It would be a lot easier to only focus your attention on one and have other people helping to connect you. So it's about collaboration, it's about leadership, but it's also about support and innovation around diversifying the voices and listening to and finding people who we don't hear from normally. So there's a lot of work to be done, but it's something that we're aware of. And the patient and public involvement community, as we call it in the UK, is really keen to help, I think. Lots of people want to do more, and I think we can make that happen.
Thank you, Jim. And Rebecca, do you want to build on so what's we have heard from Jim and the link to equity, health equity in the discussion, the last part of the discussion? Do you want to build on that?
I just first and foremost want to really recognize the efforts of Jim and the leadership of the Health Research Authority. You've put a stake in the ground to really make sure that patient engagement is happening. And just reading the chats, but comments, I think certainly there's a long way to go in really understanding what true patient engagement looks like, how we do that systematically, how it becomes a part of our process so that any research that we're talking about is inclusive of patients, right? Making sure that people are at the table as a part of those discussions. And I would say, from a health equity standpoint, understanding where there are underserved patient populations and making sure that their voices are heard so that we're able to connect and engage can only be done in collaboration. And so that is truly, a key commitment that we all have to make, just as you said, Jim, because we can only be in so many, places at one time to share our voices. So that collaboration and that network is key for us to be able to have that kind of an impact. And I also think we have to recognize, from a health equity and diversity standpoint, there are differences that we see in patient populations. And we have to ensure that diversity of patient populations is coming into our research programs as well, so that we're able to understand and identify where there are differences and make sure that the treatments and the solutions that we're developing are going to be beneficial for all patients, whatever their differences may be, from a racial perspective, in thinking about gender differences, whatever it may be, to be able to identify that. And it does take true collaboration and commitment in order for us to do that. And so, we're committed as a partner along this journey with many of our colleagues across the industry and patient groups to make this happen.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm told that we need to engage in, I would like to continue this discussion for another couple of hours, but I'm told that we need to engage in a co-creation exercise. So I have seen in the chat, before I make the shift to the next part of the session, I have seen in the chat a couple of comments from Ananda, Carol, about the fact that patient engagement means many things to many people, that the patient community has to prioritize sometimes, and also accept not to collaborate on everything just for the sake of being there. And so I think there is really something out there. We don't say physician engagement, because that would mean 50,000 things. And I think we have not done enough of work here in building enough clarity. What we mean by engagement, what type of activity, with who, what is the representation? Are we talking expertise, experience? So I think there is really a lot of work to do there to help articulate this discussion in a more granular way. So I have seen these comments. I also have seen several questions about patient engagement in developing countries. It's a very important topic. We'll come back to that. I think it deserves a dedicated session. What I can say only for now is that DNDi, who used to be they used to say they develop medicines for neglected disease, and now actually they are talking about neglected patients. They are all about developing countries, and they are starting to explore what they can do in patient engagement. And a lot of the questions they ask are actually the question I've seen in the chat. So maybe a follow-up session with the NDI on some of these questions. We will shift now to an exercise open to everybody in the audience. So it's a group map activity. So you should get the link. So you should get the link in the chat very soon. And basically, we will ask you a couple of questions. The first one that we will be able to use as a digest of the session after is which stakeholder group are you from? Because what we would like to know after is like how different were the responses based on the group you belong to. The second question will be about from your stakeholder group perspective, what do you need to make more patient engagement happen? And our other, so that's the yellow part. And then the second question is how other stakeholder groups can help you achieve that. And we have seen, I think, in several occasions that external forces can really help the internal champions to make change happen and to challenge inertia. And so while you identify the needs and what you can do within your own organization, what are the different things for your stakeholder group still that other stakeholder group can do to help you? And so we will leave it. I think we can start filling, and I've seen some of you, it's moving quite fast on the screen. So can we have the first question and share the screen with everybody? So we have 177 people in the audience. I will give it a little bit of time so I can see people are still joining. Just Diana, just to make sure, if we move to the next question, people can still join, right? Okay, so we can see just quickly to comment on the audience we have. 1/3 industry, 1/3 the patient community, advocates and experts. But if I aggregate with patient organization, we are over 40%. Caregivers, only one. Research funders, only one regulator. So if there are other regulators, please, or researchers, funders, please log in into the tool. And we can go to the first question, please, Diana. So you have 2 questions on the screen. And so let's start with the left side of it. If you want to continue further adoption and deployment of patient engagement in your own organization, what do you need? And then as you think, I can already articulate the second question. What can other stakeholder groups do to help you achieve that? Remember, we are in the patient engagement open forum. So it's about collaboration and co-creation. And you see there is a little thumb up. Since the IDs are coming very quick, please use the thumb up to actually help prioritize the one that you like the most. Okay, I open to all panelists, Anka, Jim, Rebecca, Maria, Valentina, would you want to comment on the result? Please do. In the same time, Diana, can you put the most voted ID at the top? Is it feasible? And sorry to put you on the spot. If it's not feasible, we'll find a different way. So there is clearly a huge demand for more cooperation and collaboration. So what we do today is not enough. That's clear. And I see a point maybe in the when you can add comments to an existing IDs if you want, but on the right end, the 4th one, funds and formal plans for bidirectional patient community engagement of representative communities. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but I would be happy to hear more about it or to read more about it in the comments. On the left, can we go at the top? Diana, please. I'm really happy to see the better measurement tools to explain the value of patient engagements. And I've seen there were a couple of questions about measure the positive impact of patient engagement? It was a broad question, health systems. So there is existing evidence when it comes to clinical trial performance, when it comes to, for pharma companies in particular, the value of a pipeline and actually the chance of a molecule to be approved if there is patient engagement are higher. There are some publications, you will find them on Synapse. We have a repository of all materials related to that. It's still some fragmented evidence, so it's clear that we are missing some evidence. There is also, but I think the question is not based on the evidence of the impact. The question is about at least the work we want to cover this year in the Patient Engagement Open Forum is how can we measure patient engagement to learn. And so it's not necessarily with the idea to police who is right, who is wrong, who do it well, but just to understand what is our starting point, and more important, how can we improve? Because I think I still hear sometimes some organizations that make big claims that they are so patient-centric, there's nothing they should learn, and that's by default. I know it's not true, but we miss some tools to actually have a proper dialogue about that. So measuring the activity of patient engagement, measuring the quality of patient engagement, and measuring the impact of patient engagement. There is quite some work in the pipeline already. We have built on the, so there is the work from IMI Paradigm. There is an open consultation very soon about a tool that helps anybody, whoever you are, whatever activity you are planning, to select key performance indicators or measurement you could be using based on some research initially done by IMI Paradigm. But it boils down 87 measurements to 4 or 5, depending on which filter you are using. And that helps you decide which one you could be using. So PFMD will be launching that in the next few weeks. And that's one piece of the work where there is much more to do to have an arsenal of measurement tools in patient engagement. Anything striking for the panelists?
Can I intervene? What I find really striking is the diversity of input in these questions. I mean, there are some clear, winners in the what's most needed to further enable patient engagement, and in the what you need from the other stakeholder groups. But what's really striking here is that there are, I don't know, 90 participants or more, 100 something participants, and there's dozens and dozens of answers. So what's really striking in here is the breadth of needs from one's own group and from the other group. So what I would say is thank you for creating this exercise, because it's really, really informative. One of the words that I didn't hear today, but it came out of virtually every intervention of the other panelists, is the word trust. There's clearly a need to build and strengthen the trust relationship between patients and patient organizations and all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. So I think as a relative newcomer to this, it's really important that that PEOF's work is really centered about building that trust to bring everyone together. And again, thank you for doing that. You've been working on it, and I also am noting on the desire to hear the patient's voice and the desire to seek the right patient, the most relevant, to create that, to bring that, to seek it and to bring it to the table. There's a very interesting question in the chat, and I don't know, I thought I saw Jim typing an answer about making patient engagement mandatory, or more of an ethical obligation. I don't know if mandatory is quite the word, but definitely how to make it the norm is a question to be discussed, and I'd love to hear what the others would think about it. Are we ready for mandatory with all the caveats and potential risks that that might involve? Are we as a patient community, I mean, we are definitely up for participating, and there's also clearly a need for additional education, for capacity building. It's not only about bringing patients on board, it's also about bringing patient organizations on board with their representativeness, and the ability to bring the broader view into discussion. How do we make patient engagement a norm? For me, would be perhaps a better question than the anonymous question that was put in. So I will stop here with my initial thoughts, because there's a lot of them, they just keep coming. And anyway, thank you for this co-creation exercise, because it really brings a breadth of ideas that I think we will benefit from.
Thank you very much, Anka. Very good insight. And there is a question: are we ready for mandatory? I think it's. I think making the chaos we observe already today will be even stronger if it was mandatory today. I hope we will get there at some point, but there is a big question on how we get there and all the work we need to do to make it ready. We have a second question for everybody in the audience. The question is about, because we have seen, and from the comment from Ananda, from Carol, and there's still some work. Eva also, thank you, Eva, for clarifying what you mean by bi-directional in the chat. What can we do? Because we observe that the patient community is quite thin with all the commitments, responsibilities, and the current state of resources in average. So can we move to the next question, Diana, please? And so you, as stakeholder group, not the patient committee, excluding the patient committee in this case, what can you do to actually help increase, help empower? The word was used several times in the cloud and then in the chat, to help empower the patient community to actually continue to develop, increase the bandwidth, the capacity to be agile on the Ukraine front, but also to continue addressing all the needs from all the different stakeholders. So if you can start putting ideas to see, okay, what are the other stakeholders? And in the end, all the other stakeholders are in service of the patient. And so that's still normal to think like that. So what other stakeholders can do to help the patient community develop, strengthen, and grow? And as we develop the question, I see a few. So I don't remember who said he was using the paradigm matrix. So, Robert,
it was
I think.
Robert Joyce.
Yes, and I see some people commenting that more people should know about that. And actually, that's part of the reality we observe in PFMD. And I think Maria and Valentina will not contradict me. There are many tools out there. They are available. And if you search it, you find it. So there is a question now on how we apply it. It's not easy to apply a tool, but and to bring that within existing processes, within an existing system. No, still, it's not like we start from scratch. And so, yes, we need to build awareness about these tools, but I think there is also, we need to build the expectation that we have to stop pushing for this tool and people come and get it, because there is something very frequent in my personal experience is that people don't know what's happening in terms of patient engagement for the given expertise they are in charge of. And so that's very important that we raise the bar. And I think here, all of us, we can actually raise the bar and make sure that when we talk to different stakeholders, organization, experts in a given organization, that we make sure that we raise the bar in terms of expectation. We just don't go there anymore to be there. We have expectation that they have a minimum of expertise and experience, and they know what's happening in terms of their field. We are not there to train them. And of course, we do it in practice when it comes, but I think we can change a little bit the mindset there. And so that's something that there is way too much tools that are way too low in terms of the usage of them. And so that's something very important.
Nicola, may I come in here?
Sure.
I see education and training is being upvoted highly here. And I see that as a challenge also for you, Patti, but for all of us to keep providing that education. So not only about patient engagement, but about the medicines R&D process and where patients can be involved. So that challenge continues and is growing. I'm happy to see that, but it is our main mission. So we will continue working on that, definitely.
Thank you, Maria. We are getting to the end of the session slowly. Yes, thank you, Jana, for sharing the Upati toolbox, very important one in the context of what we just discussed. In terms of, so please continue to feed, the group map will remain open. I'm not sure we have set a date for that, but I'm sure at least until the end of this week. What we will do on our side, the PEOF team, is to actually cluster by themes and by stakeholder groups to see what are the specific needs we can identify from such a broad engagement. And so what maybe are the priorities and maybe ideas that we can come back with and put on the table to start co-create with everybody with your contribution moving forward. And it's important to say the patient engagement open forum is a session with today 170 people online. It's one level of co-creation, but Upati, EPF, PFMD, and many other organizations or one-on-one organizations have actual working group developing materials and so on. So please ask if you have heard about patient engagement and patient experience data fusion. Ask PFMD if you want to work on trainings. See with Maria. So please ask if you want to be involved further in the actual writing of this tool, the assessment of this tool, testing of these tools. There is also the one on monitoring. The matrix selector for patient engagement is coming out very soon. So there is plenty of space for you to engage deeper on the topics you would like to engage. So please contact us if you have an interest there. And I think I will give the word to Anka now. I think we can close the group map for now. Keep writing in there. And so we are very happy to have Anka new in your role. I think it's 6 weeks or something like that, Anka.
Week 5.
Week 5, okay. So I'm going even too fast. And so we wanted to hear from you as the new lead for EPF. What have you heard today? What does that bring to you? And maybe already some first thoughts for what's next.
Well, look, it's really, really exciting, and I think if anything, this discussion brings additional hope for the future of patient engagement. I wanted to highlight, 3 ways in which patient engagement can add to the value, can improve the policy, the processes, the research, the development. But I think, perhaps I don't need to emphasize them myself. They came out quite obviously in discussion, but I would summarize. One, patients, obviously, they bring their very specific and unique needs, and they inform the rest of the stakeholders on what it is they actually need. And I think it's very important to actively seek those voices, because otherwise we risk having a fairly paternalistic approach to patient engagement. The second key value that patients have is helping prioritize, and I think if anything, the last 2 years have shown just how powerful that role can be. And then, obviously, I already said at the beginning, the collaboration and co-creation, as we've seen it today, just the amount of knowledge, views, nuance, and all the things that can be done with that in improving patients' lives, because that's why we're here. So I think all of these are basis for sustainability of the patient community, of patient engagement specifically. I hear a lot of concerns, and there's a very interesting comment from Ananda about tokenism. I think perhaps you may have a point, but without incentives to involve patients, it might drop off the agenda. So until we get to a normalized patient engagement, I would not discard these incentives. At least that's my opinion. Again, coming from an umbrella patient organization with a very wide range of members, I know that in our community we have so much knowledge and resources that we keep building the capacity of our members to participate as patient organizations, as representatives, but also individual patients. There's Maria here with Upati, building so much insight into patient advocates. I think the ability of the patient community to represent itself is growing, and it is truly inspiring to be part of that growth. That's my personal reflection. Anyway, we're here to support this, and thank you very, very much for having this discussion. Really.
Thank you very much, Anka, and very good read about what you have heard today. I think there's some key issues that we have to address, key concerns that we have to address, very important to move forward. So welcome again, and good to see you with us, and looking forward for the next steps already. I would like to thank the great panel. It was very nice, and Jim, Rebecca, Anka, they have brushed actually quite a broad description of patient engagement. All these topics will be developed further as we move forward during the year. So I will end my moderation here. Thank you, everybody, and I will actually give the voice to Maria and Valentina to close the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nicola, and thank you to our distinguished speakers. It feels like we've just started the conversation and just could go on for hours and hours. And this is a good way to start the open forum this year, and the sessions will continue. And so thank you for all of you for your active engagement in the session, in the chat and the Q&A, and also the group map. We have gathered some very important insights today about the different trends and the emerging issues, obstacles, but also enablers. And we will keep the group map open as mentioned earlier, so keep adding your comments and ideas there. So we hope that you have enjoyed the session. May I have this next slide, please? There will be a feedback survey sent to you. It will open automatically after this call is closed. So please take a few minutes to reply. Your feedback is very important to us and will help us to improve the future sessions. Some post-session resources will also be available in a few days, and this will be sent to you via email, so keep an eye on your inbox. And so finally, on behalf of the organizing committee, big thank you to all of you.
Thank you, everyone, also on behalf of EPF. It was very dynamic, and it shows again that we still need to focus on patient engagement. So the work is not over, for sure.
Thank you, Valentina. Thank you to everyone and our co-organizers and our speakers.
See you all very soon in the next session. Patient engagement and patient experience data, evidence-based patient engagement, really critical for the success of everything we do. See you there.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.